because it's the silly, stupid, fascinating, weird, wonderful. They're my people, and more often than not, they're the geeky people as well.
But this real sense that what you do as you emerge out of Middle Earth in your real life is you hope, because Tolkien's so good at capturing that.
I mentioned Betamax. For anybody older, that's the old version of a video cassette. A video cassette is an old version of a DVD. A DVD is not set in the cloud.
And I said, I'm not happy. No, I've got bits wrong here. And she said, yeah, but that's all part of the learning process. That's all part of the. That makes it unique to you. That those kind of imperfections within it.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the kitchen drawer of live stream and podcasts. Not just any kitchen drawer, but that one that has all the trinkets and oddities and gizmos, the loose screws, batteries and birthday candles. We have a good rummage around and try and find that one thing that we're after. We carefully extract it, hold it aloft and put it to good purpose. Welcome to tonight's Faith in Geekery, and I am Mark, and this is...
Yeah.
And tonight we are joined by Kerry. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. And sir is very polite of you.
That's the first sir we've ever had, I think.
Yeah, that just came out actually, so apologies for that. Good evening. What geekiness have we been up to? Jen says hello.
Hello, Jen the Wren. Well, I'll kick off and say that within my role-playing community, we have an annual spring festival where all the other different clans and groups of people come together over 5 sims. A sim is a plot of land, and they're all squidged together, and it is slightly manic, and it is very, very busy, and everyone kind of displays in their dance troupes and their warrior bands and all the rest of it. So I am the in-house graphics person that often then gets asked at the last minute to do, can you do banners and decorate for X, Y, and Z? So that is what I've been doing, and we're linking that with Relay for Life as well for the American Cancer Society, because a lot of people are American in that particular group, and just kind of working out how do we come alongside with our storytelling and our community and also do something good at the same time. So it's going well. It's really fun. It's my favorite bit of the year.
Well done. So I was going to say that this is an annual thing, a kind of gathering.
Yeah, so it happens every year in springtime. It's within the storytelling. It's that place where you come onto neutral ground and you do all the trading and your kind of mutual storytelling and get to showcase what you're about. So I did a brochure because we are a resort sim within a river delta system that is kind of marshy, so yeah, it's quite in depth but really lovely. So. That's
very specific. It's
really specific. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, it gives you a lot to play with. Then once there's a lot of story, you can then go, well, if there's all this story, where do I fit within it? Whereas if it's quite light, if it's all about battles or warrior tournaments, well, what do you do if you come from a long line of pacifists? And so yes, the deeper the better for me.
Fantastic. Tim has commented, been doing a little bit of D&D world building, but did spend the day at local farm with the now 3-year-old. We saw some good cows.
That's fantastic. Lovely friend Lydia.
Oh yes, indeed. Kerry, what have you been up to? Anything exciting, geeky or otherwise?
I think you might guess my geek is very much music based. So I did manage this week to finally finish a book I've been reading since Christmas, which is the best part of 700 pages on creation records, which is a bit niche, but all about an independent record label of which I have various purchases over the years they existed, and a lot of bands that they were about I was a fan of, and then I also did my other geeky thing, which was to buy more records because the rule is there is never too many records to buy. And this is not agreed within our household, where there's a view that actually, surely you've got enough now. However, there's always another discovery. So this week, a Silver Jews album that I didn't have, and a band called The Pains of Being Pure at Heart. And they've just released their production of their early EPs via a Scottish label in this country. So I was really pleased to finally get it delivered, because it had been hanging around for about 3 weeks not getting to me. But that's my level of geek. Whatever Becca was talking about, I have no idea.
No. No,
And
that is the joy of what we are here, is that there's something in your body language as soon as you started talking about what you've been up to that I think is really addictive, and I think that's why we keep doing what we do, because it's just fascinating to see other people's joy.
For podcast listeners, you should say that Kerry is sat in his living room with, I think, about what we can see is a 3x3 Kallax full of vinyls.
Actually, it's 4x4.
But yes.
And that's not all of them.
And already Tim has put, wait a second, is that an icon of St. Nick Cave poking out from the vinyl shelf behind Kerry?
Yes, it is, Tim.
So that is a candle with Nick Cave as the Messiah sort of thing.
And no, it's a religious figure. I wouldn't.
Okay.
He never goes quite as far as messianic.
Oh,
well,
okay.
I don't know, at risk, but he's not quite that far on himself yet.
But very good, very good.
What about you, Mark?
I have continued to just put a little subtitle, where is it, just down here, to remind myself what I've been up to, which says Shrinkies and Hatchimals, because my daughter turned 8 this weekend, and so part of the party weekend we were making shrinkles, which are, or shrinky dinks is a common thing, of where it's a piece of plastic and you use a marker pen and you kind of you draw like a template, or I drew several templates. I've got a picture of it later on in the Geeky Gallery, and basically we kind of handed it out to all the kids, and some of the adults did it too, and you colour it in, and then you put it in the oven, and it shrinks down to like a quarter of the size, and it goes really hard.
Size, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it becomes like perspex sort of thing. So it becomes like a keychain that you can kind of wear on your keys and things like that. The other thing I've got to say is that we were witness to something called Hatchimals, and this is very much something that my daughter is passionate about and geeky about. And basically, it's an awful lot of single-use plastic as well, unfortunately. You kind of get this massive egg, which looks like a rugby ball shape, and you kind of twist various bits on and plug a bit in, and it kind of comes to life, this kind of egg, and it starts to light up, and basically you are encouraged to rock it, to lift it up, to cuddle it. And basically this starts to react to you in a real kind of physical way, as in to say it lights up, and as you are physical with it, it kind of starts to react more and more. We got one of these at Christmas and we kind of rushed it. Oh yeah, I was going to say Jenny was there, she kind of saw it, and basically over this space of about 10-12 minutes, the more you interact with it, the more it lights up and the more it starts to make noises, and then eventually it starts to kind of go multicolored rainbow, and you place it down and then it starts to tap, and the little beak emerges, and the top of this egg kind of starts to crack, and it physically cracks and comes out of this egg. This little kind of...
This sounds terrifying, Mark.
Yeah, and it's like a little dragicorn or something like this. It's like and it becomes this cuddly pet that once you kind of remove from it, you can kind of have limited exchanges with it. It kind of copies your voice. You can feed it, and like the usual kind of interactive electrical gadget and gizmo. But it's like almost a performance of how you get into it, and some would say it's ridiculous. I'm nodding, but my 8-year-old absolutely
It
loved it and
sounds
adored it.
magic.
Yes, it was very weird but lovely at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been up to.
Sam
is there
Wallace asks, is crafting geeky? We would say absolutely. If you think it's geeky, we think it's geeky with you. So Sam is about to join a knit and natter group at her local library. That's absolutely geeky. That is geeking on a whole level, another level when you join other people with your crafty geekiness.
Absolutely. And any more for any more? I don't think anyone else has commented, so we shall move on to geeky news. So, in fact,
this is the Faith and Geekery news, broadcast to your home and around the world.
So I've just got a little bit of a montage of pictures on the screen. The first thing is the kind of news about we have Sadie Sink, who is the younger sister from the Stranger Things, is set to appear in Spider-Man 4, but there is some speculation of what character she's going to be. There's also Ted Lasso, Series 4 has been kind of greenlit, and various people have been signed up to it, but not everyone has signed up to it yet. They're going through that process of renewing contracts and all that malarkey. I should also mention that it's Carl Urban from The Good Boys and Thor Ragnarok is starring in Mortal Kombat 2 as Johnny Cage, and so there's a few kind of pictures of that from Warner Brothers, which looks interesting. And then what else we've got? Yeah, we've got the gaming board game news. The senior executive of Cosmos Games, Heiko Weinfelder, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, is retiring after 30 years. He's been involved with Catan, the Escape games and things like that. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes next from Cosmos Games and things like that. As well as we have Dice Company Small Embers, their main campaign has come back as their podcast. Moana 2 is now streaming on Disney, and the Lilo and Stitch trailer has dropped in the last week, and there's been all kinds of interest there. So that, and also Richard Osman's, I've forgotten which book of his Thursday Murder Club or whatever it's called, is called The Impossible Fortune, and he's just finished writing it, so obviously that'll have to go through editing and otherwise, but that is also soon to be released. Anything to mention there on geeky news of interest or otherwise?
I think on the Ted Lasso thing, it was Nick Mohammed who'd cancelled a few dates of his tour. And that had become a bit of a suspicion around, actually is something happening around filming and potential work. And he put a kind of little thing out saying, just watch for the news.
Wow. That's very
Do we know who they have signed up so far?
I think it's like the Ted Lasso chappie, Leslie and somebody, but they're kind of questioning about whether Juno Temple, is it? She hasn't signed up yet, and I think it's just all kind of under wraps at the moment. But there is some speculation.
In some ways, as long as we've got Ted Lasso signed up, otherwise it's not Ted Lasso.
There's some question whether it's going to be maybe the female team, the women's team, and whether that's going to be the focus of the new series. But what's his face? Thingy's back as well. Roy Keane is back. He's definitely signed
Roy
on
Kent.
as well. Oh, sorry, Roy Kent. That's it. Sorry, yes, sorry. There's no kind of parallels there whatsoever. But yeah, anything else? I mean, I don't know. I loved Mortal Kombat as the game. The film, was it Street Fighter was the film that I kind of was into, but Mortal Kombat has never quite hit the same levels or otherwise. Tim has also just commented that Jeff Daniels has signed up for Shrinking Series 3, and that's part of therapy rather than Ted Lasso. The Mortal Kombat 2 thing, I don't know. It feels as if they're trying to kind of make good on these kind of game franchises. I've still yet to be convinced. The Mario game was okay, but I'm a little bit suspicious. Lilo and Stitch, however, whilst it does feel as if it's quite similar to the original cartoon, the cuteness of Lilo and Stitch. I mean, my kids are there already for it. They are signed up 100%. The Mick take kind of trailers and bits and pieces. So one of them was that we went to the cinema to watch something, and we thought, oh gosh, this is another Lion King, and it turns out Stitch was being lifted up instead of the Lion King and things like that. So the kids were just like, this is hilarious, we are there for it. So that's been quite fun in the Stannett household. We're looking forward to Lilo and Stitch. We've also watched Moana 2 over the weekend, which it was really lovely actually, but the songs are not to the same caliber. But it's, they haven't got
that's what puts me off from watching a sequel, because I really love Moana. But to watch a sequel where it's not quite as good, but it's capitalizing on something that was good, part of me wants to rebel. So I've not watched it yet. It's sat there.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. The storyline is okay. I think they've actually done something quite nice with the characters, but that's about it. I would say everything else is a little bit stretched. The fact that kind of Maui has another rappy song, or they're kind of going, you should have just shelved it. It wasn't amazing. And all the other kind of, it's just a shame they didn't even just repeat some of the first ones again. It felt as if it was just a bit like, you're trying, because that's going to be that kind of, you're trying to do a copy of that one there, and you're trying to do a copy of that one there, and none of them hit home as much as any of the rest of the first ones. So it's a bit meh. But anyway, so I think that's unless there's any other comments, that's going to be the end of Geeky News.
Hi, Geeky News. Yes, where there's not a sound effect, we make one.
Absolutely. Speaking of sound effects, we're going to come over to the quiz. So if we've got pens and paper ready, we're going to come to the quiz.
Oh, we got the old one back.
I accidentally clicked on that one, so that's good. So, folks, we are going to need to bring up. I haven't done this yet.
I'm opening a note card on my phone.
Just bear with, because I have forgotten to load up Tim. And here, Tim.
I was going to say we were missing him from our screens.
Yes, here we go.
It looks like Tim's just moved house.
He has indeed. It looks very studious.
Welcome to the Faith Geekery quiz on this, the 18th of March, 2025. Hi, I'm Tim. I'm your quiz master. Now, for those that have done these quiz before, you may feel this quiz might be quite hard. I have heard you.
Rubbish.
And
good.
I'm changing.
Oh, good. Phew.
I've added multiple choice answers.
I love
to
a multiple
this quiz.
choice.
So hopefully,
Thanks,
your niche knowledge will come in handy here. And if not, may the luck ever be in your favour. Anyway, let's get started. You know the rules. You have 5 questions, 5 answers. We're going to read the questions twice, read the options twice. You have a short period of time to answer and write down your questions, or confer with the people in the room and those in the comment section as well. And then I will pause for a short time and we'll do all the answers right at the end. So 5 questions, 5 answers. There are no bonus points, but I may be a little bit lenient. You'll find out. With question 1. In which of the following movies has Nick Cave been credited as a composer, i.e. has to be a named credit in the credits of the movie?
So I think Kerry's going to be good at this.
Lawless, the 2012 one. The Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne from 2021. About Time from 2013. And The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Redford. Not Robert Redford, Robert Ford. From 2007. That question again. Which of the following movies has Nick Cave been credited as a composer on? Lawless from 2012. The Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne from 2021. About Time from 2013. And The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, not Robert Redford.
Okay.
I still didn't quite get the name of that last film, which is the one I'm going to go for. The Assassination of Jesse what?
Jesse James by Robert Ford, is it? I think.
Yeah. Right. I think that's the one I'm going to go for, but you don't need to tell us those bits. I just couldn't quite get what it was.
Right.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, moving on.
I wonder how long Tim is going to pause for.
Question 2.
Okay.
On this day in 1990, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist occurred, in which 2 men disguised as police officers stole 13 works of art and committed the highest value museum robbery in history. What was the value of the heist?
Ooh.
Either $200 million, $300 million, $400 million, or $500 million. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Heist Museum in 1990, in which 2 men disguised as police officers stole 13 works of art and committed the highest value museum robbery in history. What was the value of the heist? $200 million, $300 million, $400 million, or $500 million?
Oh, I've just thrown one of those down. No idea.
Yeah.
Question number 3.
Oh, are we okay to go to question number 3?
Yeah,
Yeah,
ready for 3.
I'm quite glad of the multiple choice.
Yes.
I wouldn't have gone
Multiple
that
choice is
high
good.
in
No.
any of those, so that's good.
Another historical one. On this day in 1893, 6 Methodists were sentenced to be transported to Australia for forming, by modern understanding, a trade union. In which village in Dorset were they taken from? On this day in 1893, 6 Methodists
I
were
was
sentenced to be
hoping for a
transported
multiple
to
choice there.
Australia for forming, by modern understandings, a trade union. In which village in Dorset were they taken from?
I think I know the answer to that.
I have to say, shame on you if you don't.
Okay, shame on me then. I think I've written something, and I think I haven't got it right, but I feel as if this is where my brain has gone with it, and so please have mercy on me. I think
Well, the thing is, I could be wrong yet, and then it's going to be more embarrassing that I said shame on you.
Yes, that's true. Then we'll ring the bell for you.
Is there a bell? Right, let's play.
Shame, the bell of shame.
Oh, okay,
yes.
bell of shame. I didn't realise we had one of those. Why have we not rang
We
it before?
should if we don't.
Yes. Let's keep on going, shall we? Yes.
There's a
Question
blink.
number 4. Daredevil Born Again is continuing to air on Disney+. Which borough of New York do both Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, and Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, come from? In Daredevil Born Again continues to air on Disney+. Which borough of New York do both Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, and Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, hail from?
I feel as if it's mentioned on She-Hulk, and I can't remember.
Yeah.
And question number 5.
Okay.
Amazon, sadly, depending on your understanding of it, recently purchased the rights to produce all future James Bond related movies and TV shows.
Gosh.
Currently, how many Bond movies are there? That question again. Currently,
so
how many Bond movies are there? Now, we are counting the official Bond movies here. So we are not counting Never Say Never Again, because it's not a canonical Bond movie, despite starring Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And we are not counting Casino Royale, starring David Niven as James Bond, because he is not a canonical James Bond. Currently, how many Bond movies are there?
That's really annoying. I think I've got the wrong answer, but it's interesting because there was a lot of it was the copyright, wasn't there? The two different studios were fighting over it, which is why he's obviously saying it's non-canonical. But one of them went really ridiculous, didn't it, and killed off Bond in the first. Is it that one?
No, I can't remember.
Because the one where Sean Connery comes back as a retired Bond.
Yeah.
Which is really weird. Anyway.
I used to serve Sean Connery's body double when I was a barmaid. his body double from the Medicine Man, not from James Bond.
Oh, I was going to say.
It's all
That's pretty
interesting
cool,
facts that will come up in a quiz in the future.
Very good. Let's play this, shall we?
I'm hoping on question one I've got, but I know the answer. But equally, Nick Cave appeared in one of the films he named. So he did the soundtrack and composed one, but he actually was in one of those films as well.
Oh, we'll see how that
tricky.
plays out.
Your answer's locked in? Then let's go from the top. So, which of the following movies has Nick Cave been credited as a composer on? Well, the answers are Lawless and The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. So if you answered either one of them, it's a point. If you answered both of them, it's still a point. Interestingly, Nick Cave featured in About Time, but was not a composer. And he played H.G. Wells in The Electrical Life of Lewis Wayne. He has lots of acting and composing credits to his name. He is a highly talented
Bit of a sneaky question there, Tim.
Question 2.
But I got it right,
The
so I don't
Isabella
mind.
Stewart Gardner Heist Museum occurred. What was the valuation of the heist? Now,
I put 400.
at the time of the robbery in 1999, the valuation of the artwork stolen was $200 million. But in 2000, they revalued the stolen artwork to $500 million.
Wow.
So both answers are going to be accepted as correct. That's both 200 million and 500 million.
I chose
I'm not
400, so I
enjoying
got
this.
that wrong.
Yes, I got
There
9.
have been no arrests, no leads, and none of the artwork has been recovered from that heist.
Blimey.
So if you have
It'll
it,
only go up in price as well.
congratulations. You're doing really well.
Is that what he has behind him?
Question 3.
Is it Tim?
On
Yeah.
this day in
Those boxes
1893,
there.
6 Methodists were sentenced to be transported to Australia for forming, by modern understanding, a trade union. In which village in Dorset were they taken from? For all those Methodist historians, let me hear you cry, Toll Puddle!
Right. For the record, I put Puddle Dyke. I knew that. I knew it was something about puddle, and I couldn't, for the life of me, think. So I get none for that.
There's a room in Methodist Church House called the Tolpuddle Room with a poster dedicated to the Tolpuddle martyrs.
I thought you were going to say there's a room in Methodist House for those who get that answer wrong.
Yes, where
I'll go
the
and
bell of
stand.
shame is constantly
Yes.
wrong. Yes.
I'll go and stand in that corner.
Known as the Tolpuddle Martyrs.
Tolpuddle.
If you do not know about that, I highly encourage you to go visit any of your Methodist heritage sites, which may explain a little bit more about the Tolpuddle Martyrs.
May do.
This has been not sponsored, by the Methodist Church. Question number 4. In which borough of New York did both Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, and Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, come from? The answer is Hell's Kitchen.
Oh.
You know, the Daredevil of Hell's Kitchen, Wilson Fisk from Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen is the answer.
No.
And question number 5. How many canonical Bond movies are there? Now,
I
the
put
answer
22.
is 25.
Oh, 27.
Which breaks down into 6 Connery movies, 1 Lazenby movie, 7 Moore movies, 2 Daltons, 4 Brosnans, and 5 Daniel Craigs. No, it's not that tiny. So the answer is 25.
So
count up
close.
your points. Let them know in the chat. Which question were you surprised at? Which question are you kicking yourselves over? Let us know. But that has been the quiz. I have been Tim, your quiz master. Now back to the Faith and Geekery studio. Bye.
Bye.
Gonna stop you there, Tim. I'm really glad that the quiz can kind of unite us together by not getting any points or very few points. I managed to get 1 point.
I'm
so-
pleased with my 3. I'm genuinely pleased
That
with my
is,
3.
yeah, you should be.
I think
Quite
so,
often we
advantage-
get a 0.
I think number 1 was a help for me. I'm being honest.
I feel as if
It was a gift.
Tim may have angled it slightly in your direction, but
I did feel a favour was given to me there.
Yes, I think so.
But no, well done. And folks, there, do comment your scores in the comments. Right, so we then move on to the interest of geekiness, and Kerry is coming on, which a hint may have already dropped us already. It is about Nick Cave, and so Kerry, why do you start us off? Where do you want to begin with Nick Cave?
Where to begin with Nick Cave? I mean, Tim sort of said, this guy is into lots of stuff. So, I knew him principally through music songwriting and that kind of stuff. But then he's also a composer in terms of film soundtracking. He's worked with the series composer Nicholas Lenz, producing a series of litanies. He has written novels. He has written various articles. He's spoke about God and the Bible in very interesting ways from time to time. He has an amazing kind of life story. Part of me still wonders how on earth he got to the age he's got to. He's now in his late 60s, because where he begins his life, he's from Australia. He grows up in a small town called Wangara, and his dad's an English teacher and his mum's a librarian. And Nick is one of 4 children, but he is the troublesome child in the family. And by troublesome, they end up moving him to a boarding school, because if they don't, he's going to get expelled from his current school, which was a bit of an interesting time. So he spends a year as a boarder, and then he transfers to a day student. But it's there he kind of forms his first band with a bunch of friends in this school. By the time he's 15, 16, he's already into alcohol in a quite serious way. He's beginning in those mid-teens to already begin experimenting with drugs. He gets done for breaking and entering. On one occasion, he's riding on the outside of a vehicle as his friend's driving it along, and slams the brakes on, and he flies off. And this is why you kind of think it's amazing he's still alive, and yet he is. He grows up, and his first band is the Boys Next Door. At that point he was the singer because he had no other discernible talent. The other friends in the band, were more gifted, and then they kind of become this. They transform themselves from this band called the Boys Next Door into this band called the Birthday Party. And the thing about the Birthday Party is it's not easy listening in any way, shape, or form. They kind of leave Australia to come to London thinking that's the way they can make a break, but they can't afford to live in London, really. They live in squats. His heroin use is getting more necessary for him. The band's live performances are quite a feat in terms of there's often a lot of aggression between the band and the crowd, and the crowd and the band. If you look some of the footage of the live performances, they're quite visceral. And in one sense, the band eventually comes to an end, because they think after about 2-3 years together, they cannot keep this up, because if they do, one of them will die, because actually the alcohol, the drug kind of consumption was something else. And it's at that point, this band called Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is born from the remnants of the Birthday Party. And I guess, so that was in the kind of the turn of the 80s. I got into Nick Cave not until the early 2000s, with a couple of albums that I bought on the kind of, I've not bought Nick Cave before, I'll buy Nick Cave. It was a bad mistake in terms of what happened after that and the way I've become a little bit more than obsessed. I think most people may know one Nick Cave song, or 2 or 3 Nick Cave songs, and the songs they're likely to know will be Where the Wild Roses Grow, which is a duet he did with Kylie Minogue. And this was in the kind of I think it was late 80s or 90s. What's really interesting is, Kylie Minogue was warned not to do a duet with Nick Cave, because he was this very difficult, dark character using heroin and everything else. And yet the pop princess sings this duet, which is a murder ballad. And it comes out as a single. I
loved that. Yeah.
Well, it comes out as a successful single, which was quite new for Nick Cave, and quite unique. The thing is, I suspect there were loads of Kylie fans that then went out and bought the album The Murder Ballads, which is basically about 10, 11 songs in which 60, 70 people die, including one dog. It is not fun. Well, actually, it's entertaining in some of the songs, because some of the characters are quite ludicrous. But you can imagine all these Kylie fans potentially going out and buying this Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds album. And he put it out there just because it's a filler, really, while he was working on a much more significant album, which has a song in it I think a lot of other people know, and I think this is one that Mark knows, called Into My Arms. And that's the kind of love ballad that, has this wonderful opening line that many people remember, which is, I don't believe in an interventionist God. And then I think the third Nick Cave song that most people will know is Red Right Hand, because it was a theme tune to the Peaky Blinders. And therefore a load of people recognise that song, and live it's one of those feature songs. But I think for me, the love of Nick Cave it's partly musical, it's lyrical, it's the whole experience. But the other part of it is actually the way he writes and talks, and the spirituality. Well, I'll come back to it in a minute, but the kind of religious thinking in his writing. I said spiritual, that's a very bad word to use with Nick Cave. He does an interview with this guy called Sean O'Hagan. Here's a book, and I'll show you this book. It's very special to me because this is when I met Nick Cave, and I got a hug off Nick Cave in my dog collar, and I've got my arms around him. And if anybody's ever on a Zoom meeting with me, that's my pause picture. But this is my Nick Cave book, signed by Nick. It says in the front, because there's a comment early on in the book where this enemy editor says to one of his reporters, whatever you do, don't get him started on God. And so I said to Nick Cave, I said, could you write to Kerry, don't get him started on God, in the front of my book? And that's what he did. And there's an article, there's a conversation between him and Sean says, you're very spiritual, your music's very spiritual. And Nick Cave responds, I don't like the word spiritual. I prefer the word religious, because religion makes demands of us. Now, I find that fascinating.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because a lot of people like the language of spiritual and don't like the language of religion. But for Nick Cave, it's a complete flip. But the religious aspect of his work is fascinating to me. He's always played with the idea of God. And as a young lad, it's remarkable, he sang in the choir at the local cathedral. And the Bible becomes part of his resources. And so some of the songs, so there's a song called Up Jump the Devil, and it kind of draws on this idea there is that the devil's stalking, that actually people are predestined in some ways to evil because the devil's behind them. He writes a song called Mercy, which is about John the Baptist. He writes songs that draw on lots of biblical themes, and he talks in one kind of lecture, and that's what it was. He talks about this rancorous God of puke and bile, and I became his very mouthpiece, because he kind of has this stereotypical notion, and it's completely heretical, which is very Marcion. And there are Methodists and Christians who think the same, that somehow the God of the Old Testament was a miserable old git who got at people and was horrible, and that Jesus is the nice God and everything's good. And he kind of plays with that a bit. So a lot of the older stuff is about human deprivation. It's about, the evil that people are possible of. It's about difficulty and struggle. And that kind of is a rooting thing. But then he goes through, if you read it in a kind of particular way, this kind of discovery of the character of Jesus and the more sort of parabolic approach. And therefore he moves into this alternative way of seeing things. It's a very easy way of thinking about him, like Old Testament Nick Cave, which is kind of up to the 80s stuff. And then you move into the New Testament Cave, which is like the 90s, noughties stuff. And then you into this next Cave, who is becoming ever more theologically enriched. And I think it's all those kind of things that play together. Sorry, I will babble on, so you'll have to interrupt.
You're so welcome. This is absolutely perfect.
So, can I just interrupt? Can I just say that for those people who haven't heard it, is there a way of defining it? Because I went on Google, because I listened to you sent out a playlist of kind of YouTube clips, which you can find on the Discord, by the way, folks. If you're part of our Discord, or if you're not, then join it. But I kind of Googled it to say what sort of music, what sort of genre is Nick Cave, and the response was, or you can Kosia it rather than Google it. It is post-punk gothic rock. Is that a helpful term, or does it not do it justice? Or I guess when you've said about the Old Testament and New Testament and emerging, has his kind of style changed over the years? Or
the style's changed. So like the earlier stuff is quite abrasive. It's quite when
is that awful?
No, not to me. The early guitarist was a guy called Blixer. What he said, who played with a band called Neubauten. and they were an industrial noise band from Germany, so very attractive sounding kind of industry. You think about that is. But what he said to Blixer was basically, I just want you to make noise with the guitar. I don't want you to strum. I want you to kind of create effect and noise into the song. So the early songs, they are quite gritty and kind of tense and sharp and aggressive. And he was in the Birthday Party days and a bit early on that, he was linked with the Gothic scene. Now, actually, he would resist that. He releases a song called Release the Bats purely because he thought he'd take the mickey a little bit out of the Gothic kind of genre. And I think that, so there is that kind of aspect to him. So the early music is a very kind of grimy, dirty kind of sound. But I would say you also will hear, if you do, notes of gospel within it. It's really interesting. You'll hear that blues gospel tradition, but just differently articulated. When you get into the kind of middle period, you've got to think about singer-songwriter in terms of, there will be the piano, there will be the bass, there will be instrumental, there will be backing singers. So in one sense, I don't see him as a genre. But what I do hear, even the latest album, which is just a phenomenal album called Wild God, there are these echoes of the kind of the gospel that kind of found its way through. He does a song called Odiana, which actually he then does a Mickey take of on a collection of rarities, where he sings "Oh Happy Day, Oh Happy Day," and he's just been very honest about the way he's borrowed it. So I think that, there is the earlier pieces. One of the things I've often thought about him was some of the early records with a landscape to a novel he wrote. So he writes this novel called The Ass Saw the Angel. And if you know biblical stories, you might remember a story about an ass that sees an angel and then sort of diverts someone. This is all about this mute kind of child who's growing up in a kind of American dark Gothic. And it is a really kind of bleak novel. And I won't summarize it because it is superb. But I think a lot of the early albums are kind of written around almost like the framework and the landscape for the novel. And I think, there's always a relationship, I think, at that point between his writing, the novel he was writing, which took him 3-4 years, and the records he's recording. There's almost like a real significant relationship between them. And I think, again, on that period, heroin was playing an ever-increasing part in his life. I mean, he went to rehab numerous times, and it took till when he met his second wife, for him to finally find a way of wanting to be free of heroin. He'd been sent to rehab because he'd been arrested and other reasons, and none of those had quite worked. But then when he meets Susie Cave, or Susie Bix, who was this model, she was having her own difficulties, but the heroin was part of his life. And basically she realizes she can't sustain this. And he tells this wonderful story to a psychologist, which he says, I used to go to church on Sunday. And then when church finished, I would then head up the particular road in London because that's when the heroin dealers would be out. So I would do my bit of good and then match it with my bit of bad. And Susie said to me, she said, you can't keep doing this. It's really bad for you. You've got to stop going to church. And he says this in this wonderful interview. And actually, Susie is the one, and his love for Susie and wanting to be with Susie is the thing that finally brings him through his addiction and to the other side, and he has not used since, I think, it was around the 2000 mark, that actually that's where he really made this decision. And his life story is a very open one in recent times. So what some people would have discovered of him was that a few years ago, one of his sons, Arthur, he had twin sons with Susie, and Arthur died in a tragic accident. He'd experimented with LSD and fallen from a cliff. And it was after that this other aspect of him began to emerge more publicly for people around his spirituality and his journeying. So he begins this thing called the Red Hand Files, where people are invited to write to him about anything. So it could be, I hate your latest record, or you've turned into a Hallmark card entrepreneur now rather than the man who used to swear and shout. I'm going through this grief. I'm struggling with addiction. And people will write all sorts of things to him, and he will write back publicly. And so there's about 200, 300 letters now on the Red Hand Files, and they're like pastoral letters to fans who literally can write about anything to him, and he doesn't write back to all his fans, but each every week or so there'll be another letter response, and he begins to let people into his grief, and it's part of his own healing. He begins to offer spiritual advice, literally, around his own practices. He will talk about God, and he's not apologetic these days about where he has come to in his religious journey. He will not use the language of Christian, but he goes to church. And he talks about church and says, the thing is, I go and I experience this moment, and I'm different because of it. And so, he's been interviewed by 2 Archbishops of Canterbury. I saw somebody comment about the Archbishop of Canterbury. Yeah. So personally, I think the Rowan Williams one's better. I don't think Justin Welby really understood him. I think he was somebody thought, oh, Justin, it'd be really good to interview Nick Cave, but it's not great. And I didn't reference, so it's just a bit dull. There are much better interviews with Nick Cave. But I think that whole spirituality comes out, and that I look at the lyrics of his songs. There's a song called Breathless, and it's a love song, but actually it's about God. And it's about everything is breathless without you. The video to it is truly appalling, and he should never have made it. It's got bunny rabbits and foxes in it in cartoon form. It's absolutely atrocious. But the song, this sense of the breathlessness of life without you is absolutely immense. And his friend Sean Hogan didn't even realize it was about God, but it really is. And then he talks about the fact that every love song is about God for him, which is a really kind of grand statement to make. But actually, there's somehow that God is in the midst of it, and in the desire, the longing, sometimes in the unmet desire, and the sense of address and response. But I just find him a really fascinating character. I mean, people listening to music might find him quite serious, if not somber, if not depressing. I don't necessarily see that. But when you hear him interviewed, he's got a great sense of humour. When he performs live with the Bad Seeds, it is just a transcendent experience. He is so engaged with the fans. He is so engaged in the music. He is so communicative, and he just brings people into the space in a way that, gosh, I wish most churches could manage. I mean, it is just unbelievable. And his fans are, I'm quite mild, can I point out, compared to some, but actually, you get caught in this moment, and the lyrical space, the musical space, the kind of, there's a wonderful song called "Get Ready for Love," and I love the video because it's from a performance in Brixton, a live performance that's been edited together. But the song itself has this great lyric in it: "Praise him till you've forgotten what you praise him for." And you've got this kind of, and it's like you've got this mad white preacher backed by this dysfunctional gospel band just going bonkers across the stage and just dragging people into the experience. And it really is quite fiery and just stunning.
So when you kind of come to this, or if you are talking to someone else about this, is it because he can create this space, which is why, or is there something about like I don't want to say the role of the prophet, or like they be able to speak fresh about God with kind of a wider cultural kind of vocabulary, or the way that he does it, or what is it that kind of that you, I guess, what is for you the kind of, why is it Nick Cave over, say, another group or otherwise, or is it? Yeah,
I think it's all those things. I think he is a stunning musician. I think he's a stunning songwriter. I think that the breadth of his, I've got 20 odd Bad Seeds albums. I've got this 5 or 6 birthday party EPs and albums. I've got 10 soundtrack albums. I've got 2 Grinderman albums. I've got his novels. I've got his other writings. And I think that, so it's about the whole person, but I think he is just intellectually interesting. He is theologically interesting. He is lyrically interesting. His songs are equally, they bring you so alive, and yet at the same time they can touch the darkest of places. I think and as an artist, it's really interesting that, he is so committed to his art, it can sometimes be uncomfortable for others. So, there's you'll have heard all the the concerns around Kanye West, and actually he will. But one of the things he says is, one of the song he would have at his funeral is "I Am God" by Kanye West. It wouldn't be my choice personally, but he's Nick Cave. And people said, "Well, how can you like that considering what he's like?" But what he then does is he separates the artist and how they might be from the art that's being produced. Now, not all people will feel comfortable with that. I mean, for me, I think he is the artist. Well, not Kanye West, but Nick Cave. He is the artist he is because of who he is and who he's become and the journey that he's taken. I think they're inseparable. But I think that for he himself, the art stands first, and if you don't like it, that's tough. This is what I'm creating. This is what I am going to do now. And you may not like it. So when he was in art college, he found a brilliant way of annoying his art teacher. Which was he combined his love of religious art with pornography, and apparently this did not go down well in his creations with his art teacher. But there was always that sense of wanting to provoke, of wanting to create reaction. So with the birthday party, it was about provoking a response from the crowd. It was really quite in at them because he wanted a reaction from them. I think the problem became when actually all there was a reaction that wasn't actually engaged with the art itself, and that's where he lost. I think personally that's where I think he lost kind of the sense of the birthday party. I think when the bad seeds came along, it was still about wanting a reaction, but it was one about inviting people into something different. And I think I just find him lyrically, the novels are, it's interesting. So there's a novel about the death of Bunny Monroe that's currently been adapted for TV. I think it might be Netflix, but Matt, who was Doctor Who, what's his name?
Matt Smith.
Come on. Matt Smith is playing the figure of Bunny Monroe. This is not going to be Sunday night watching for Methodists. If you read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, but, Bunny Monroe is not a nice person. But he's someone who's struggling in life with a child and trying to get through that. But say Matt Smith's currently playing the part and they're filming it in Brighton. It's probably finished filming by now, but that will be one of his novels coming to TV. But like I say, I'm not sure it's going to be Gladys from Sunday Fellowship sat down on Sunday night watching it with their friends. It's not really going to be that kind of appeal.
So in terms of, you talked about him, you go to church and you have some kind of change. And a lot about kind of this Nick Cave's Old Testament self, New Testament self. What is it in you that is connecting with what's going on with Nick Cave? What is the change for you? What is the connection in your personal journey?
Part of it's a theological conversation with his work, which is a really kind of, I suppose you might use the word geeky. It's a really kind of me desire to have this conversation with his work. And I think the kind of Old Testament, New Testament Nick Cave doesn't give the right story. It serves a purpose, but I think there's a really interesting thing going on in his writing that I am very much drawn to, which is whether he would understand the language of this, I have no idea. So there's a theological idea which is called the metaphysics of participation. And that's that all things are participating in God. And a song like Breathless is his statement to me around the fact that all life is participating in God. It's not that all life is God, no, but it's all life has its life because of God. So in the things you participate in, the things you see, you are sharing in something of God. God is giving something of God's self to you. So I think maybe I'm drawing a theology from him that suits my own theology, but that's definitely part of it. But equally is just the music. This is a songwriter and these are songs. So this is not poetry. I've got a book of his lyrics and I can read them and that's fine. But you put the lyrics into the music and you enter into another space. And anybody who's a fan of music knows that thing. That when you put word and music together, you enter into something that I do think is transcendent. I do think is sacramental. I do think is of God. I mean, I wouldn't put Robbie Williams in that category, but other people might find that a holy and developing experience, but I do think for me, Nick Cave is just one of many artists, but probably the most effective artist. I mean, look at it. I have quite a few to listen to. But I think for me, he is just someone who gets it in a way that I don't think I see any. I mean, Leonard Cohen probably in a different way comes close. Tom Waits in a different way is inhabiting that space. But there's just something about the life story, the narrative, the biography, the musical creation, the kind of character, the lyrical formation, the journeying, the development of the songs over a period of life. That and then when I go to see the last album came out, and to hear the resonances of the earliest material, but just very much reshaped and reformed, in a much more easy listening form to many people, and so that you can tell it's Nick Cave, but it's just kind of he's not afraid to kind of take you into a space and to deliver you to it and see what you notice. And so the last song on the last album, it's a really spiritual 1.5 minute song. It just kind of thinks, oh, he's just written this religious little song. He's taken this word from a religious song and shoved it as the last song on the album and got away with it. And that's what's great. And I think, he is somebody who's making religion, reforming it and articulating it, maybe in a way that sometimes we're not really good at within the sort of traditional form. I think he just comes at it so fresh that actually, and he's not trying to. I mean, he says about atheism, I haven't got that confidence. That actually, to be an atheist, to be so certain there is no God, is actually a position he can't hold, because I don't know how anybody could be that confident.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you, Kerry. You said before we went live, you were thinking, how am I going to fill this space and time? And I feel as if we could have, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Another half an hour at least out of you, Kerry.
And we haven't really been asking you the normal questions that we normally have done, because you've just been going for it. And we've just been sat there going, wow, this is fantastic. So thank you, Kerry, for sharing a little bit of your passion of Nick Cave and so forth. That is an encouragement to maybe just if people are interested, is the one to kind of to go for? Is it the Where the Wild Roses Grow, or?
I think my favourite album. No, that's hard. There's a wonderful double album called The Abattoir Blues, and it's got, so you might know the song Old Children, which was in a Harry Potter film, but The Abattoir Blues and the Live Orpheus is this double album, and I've got to say, I think this is an absolute belter. But with Nick Cave, it's about what mood you're in. But I do think Abattoir Blues, Live Orpheus, is also very funny, and I can't repeat one of the lyrics from the album on this channel because it might get you shut down by other people. But it is one of the funniest lyrics I've ever heard in a song.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you again, Kerry. And we are now going to kind of start to kind of wrap things up. We're going to go to our Geeky Gallery just briefly, just because there's only 2 slides, I think, this week. The first is from Note Just, who basically said that he was at the Apollo Academy Youth Orchestra, and I think he's at the back somewhere, playing a blue plastic trombone at the back. So there's a picture of a whole kind of Academy group all gathered together. On our Discord is actually a little brief video, and so you can hear the orchestra play. And then there's also a picture here, and I didn't take a note of the characters that they are, but this is Mendip Nobad getting hopefully towards the end of his painting of his figurines. I want to say 40k, Warhammer 40k people, and I think this is his 2-player game that we've kind of touched upon over the last few weeks, so find the details in the Discord because I cannot remember them. Secondly, here we go, here's just a little glimpse of the shrinkles that I created, but others have coloured in. I did my little TARDIS and a Minecraft sheep. a pink one, and there's a couple of axolotls, a Minecraft cow, and a Minecraft creeper. The axolotls were an idea that we had, that we knew that both of our children liked axolotls, so I found some clip art online and just traced them over them on the shrinkles, and they went down a storm, and the kids kind of just coloured in their own little axolotl, all kinds of colours. So yeah, we kind of went through about maybe 20 shrinkles for all the kids over the weekend. And then Jen the Wren, who's been on earlier, sharing fridge magnets, which says it's been great to see Much Ado About Nothing, an amazing cast and very funny Marvel Easter eggs. The magnets for me look very familiar because Jenny went with my Becky, and so we also have these fridge magnets on in our kitchen. And I will say they'd mentioned about Tom Hiddleston and the lady who plays Captain Carter in Marvel. So big Marvel presence, and throughout Much Ado About Nothing they reference one another. I can't remember the story of Much Ado About Nothing, but they reference each other's characters about seeing portraits of one another, and on that point on the stage they bring out kind of Tom Hiddleston as Loki, and I've forgotten the lady's name, as Agent Carter, and so it's actually Hayley Atwell. Thank you, Jenny. And so they actually reference them as Marvel characters, which is hilarious, and a lot of pink confetti on stage as well. Yeah, it sounds as if they had a lot of fun. So that is that, and I think that is the end of Geeky Gallery. Anything left to say, Becca?
I think the thing that's lingering is the idea of participation. That God is not everything, but everything can participate in that wonderful, amazing, creative space that is more than we can imagine. We do a lot of things around imagination and creativity and other worlds and other stories. But there's one narrative that is so much bigger that we can't possibly begin to imagine it, but we absolutely can participate in it.
Fantastic. I think on that note, we're going to say farewell. So bye-bye, folks. Thanks again, Kerry. And
thank you.
God bless you. Everyone, keep safe. Bye-bye.